Hey, my name is Saurabh and I'm making a tutorial for the dynamic day and night and weather system, which is a blueprint based plugin or tool which is available on the Epic Marketplace and it's free to download. So I just wanted to go over all the blueprints that's involved and basically run through the initial setup and how to use it. This works on Unreal Engine 4.20 and above. Initially, for the first thing you want to do is enable Unreal's the new Niagara particle effects. So it's actually inbuilt by default into Unreal. I believe Unreal Engine 2.4.20 and above have it. So you just go into plugins and type in Niagara. So mine comes under built-in, and as you can see, it's already enabled the first one, the second one, basically NIAGARA and NIAGARA extras. So it's already there. You just gotta go there and just enable it, and your engine will restart, and you should be all good. So so I made a new scene, as you can see, a new map, and it's completely empty. There are no actors. There's absolutely nothing. So I'm gonna go step by step on how to set up everything. So the in the content folder, the blueprint folder is named dynamic dnws underscore bp. If you go inside, you have another folder, and you go inside, you have all the main blueprints that's required. So you have like 4 different individual blueprints, and then you have all the static meshes needed, and then you have the particle effects and textures, etc. So basically, first thing what I'm going to do is drag and drop the dynamic weather blueprint. So this is the main blueprint which basically ties all these sub modules or subsystems together. Basically, it's moonlight, custom sky, and northern lights. So custom sky is actually an extension or a modification of Unreal's default BP sky sphere. I took that and changed it and added a few things of my own. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this in, and then I'm going to drag in the my custom sky blueprint, and as you can see, there's already a sky sphere after I did that. Now I'm going to select the dynamic weather and go over all the variables and actors involved in this. So in brief, the blueprint are divided into 4 subcategories depending on what their functions are, what their what the functionality is basically. And then so you have simulation, then you have actors, you have default values, and then you have the rain VFX values. So these are all extensible and customizable, and basically you can just tweak it to your own desire, I guess. So in the actors, I'm going to go with simulation first. So under simulation, this basically drives the simulation speed, whether you really want to enable the dynamic cycle. This is just literally this is basically if you want to enable the tool or the entire, if you disable this, nothing's going to work. Basically, that's it. Then you have the sky refresh frequency. This is actually how frequent in seconds the sky sphere and the skylight in the entire scene is going to refresh. This value is, so the higher the value, or I mean, sorry, the lower the value, that means more frequent the refresh rate is. That means it's going to be more expensive in terms of rendering everything. So this is exposed, and basically the performance depends on the hardware to hardware basis. And then you have the simulation speed, which is basically how fast the day and night cycle happens. And this is in degree per second again. So basically, right now its default is at 1, which means it rotates at 1 degree per second. The sun or the moon basically rotates at 1 degree per second. Then you have time of the day to start with. I believe 0.0 is about 6 p.m. Yeah, it's a 0 to 1 scale. 1 will be 5:59 p.m. So yeah, it's basically 1 day cycle in the range of 0 to 1. And then you have several actors that's required to basically run the entire simulation or the plugin to work. So sun is basically a first directional light. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a directional light, go to dynamic weather. and pick that guy. Excuse me. An exponential fog is again something that's already there in Unreal Engine. You go ahead, drag that in. Go dynamic weather, pick that, and the skylight. So you just want to drag in all these individual objects and go ahead and then link them accordingly. Then the my custom sky BP is basically this, which I already dragged in before. It's right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that one. And then so the player character is basically there because that's the position I use in with respect to, or the location I use when I want to spawn the rain particles. So since this plugin is basically extensible or can be used in a large map, so spawning particle effects in an open world or a huge map can be tricky, and this basically ensures that the particles are only spawned around the player and that's attached to the player. So yeah, that's the reason you have a player character. For me, I believe is a first person. You can't spell first person. Okay, there you go. I'm just gonna drag that in. Make sure it's auto possessed. Alright. I'm just gonna drag a cube in to make sure I don't fall through the world. Alright. Let's make that mobile. Okay, now back here. Take the first person character. And then the Moonlight Baby is basically again, if you go back to the folder, you have this. So you just want to make sure that it's selected. So by default it is selected, and if it isn't, just go ahead and type in Moonlight and you should be good. Otherwise I think you can go and drag it to, oh okay, there you go. So you have all the actors in place. Now one more thing you want to do is go to my custom sky and also update the actor for direction light here, and you should be good. So as you can see, there was a few changes and the sky refresh accordingly. So let's go back to the dynamic weather blueprint, and now I can change the time of the day and it changes accordingly. There you go. Yep. Now coming down to default values. So cloud speed, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's this cloud speed, so you can amp that up. Let's make that 20, or if you want to change the direction, make that -20, whatever. And the maximum moon brightness. Okay, so maximum moon brightness is basically the light cast onto the world from the moon or by the moon during the night time. And it's called the maximum because it has a range. So this plugin actually has moon cycles or moon phases. So there can be a full moon to no moon cycle going on depending on what the values are set, and the lighting changes accordingly every night because of that. So basically on a full moon night, the maximum brightness is the value you provide here. So this is 100 units. So yeah, so it's on a full moon night, it's going to be 1 unit, and it's going to reduce depending on the night especially. Then you have moon days. This is basically how long the moon cycle is. In in the real world, it's actually 30 days. So it's actually 29.6, I believe. So approximately 30 days for a moon to go from no moon to full moon to no moon. So you can tweak that value. The least is 5 days and the maximum is 30 days obviously. I'm just gonna let that be at 10. And so the northern lights percentage of probability is basically what's the probability that the northern lights will spawn every night. So if you keep this at 100% or 100, so that means that the northern lights will spawn every single night or each night. And if you keep this at 0, it's never gonna spawn. So you can keep it at like 50%. That means there's a 50-50 chance, or like half a chance that the northern lights will spawn every night. And then you have a couple of textures that you can choose from. Again, these are here in the folder in the dynamic sky blueprint folder. So I provided 3 textures with it, so you can use whatever you want. I'm gonna let it be, or you can make your own custom texture, whatever. And then minimum skylight intensity. Again, the whole simulation works on tweaking variables um, over the cycle, because lighting it needs to be constantly updated, needs to keep changing, etc. So this is the minimum scalar intensity and the maximum. So the range, basically the simulation takes the values between these two ranges. And then you have enable fog. So if you enable this basically corresponds to the exponential height fog, which we set here. So if you change this, so there you go. So the minimum is basically how it's least foggy the world is going to be. This is the minimum value of fog density that's going to be in the world. That's pretty. So I'm going to leave that at 0.01. I'm going to make sure this is 0.1. Let's just say 0.1. And then you have the final category, that's the rain VFX values. So again, if you want to enable the rain or the dynamic weather system, you basically enable this, the nice little checkbox there. And then you have the rain particle system. This is basically the Niagara system, again, which is there in the folder here. So by default, it's already going to have it. And if you don't, again, you just basically drag and drop this system here. It's called the rain system, rain underscore system. Initial rain timestamp. So this is the time in seconds after when you've clicked play in game when it starts raining. So right now it's at 10, which is basically 10 seconds. So right after you hit play, it's going to take 10 seconds and it's going to start raining, or the weather is basically going to get gloomy and start raining. So you can change it to 0, so that means that it's going to start raining as soon as you hit play. So I'm just going to leave that at 10 seconds. And then so minimum rain spawn times. Okay, so here's when it gets a little confusing. So this is the first time it's going to start raining. So the first time is going to be right now 10 seconds after you hit play. And let's say after that you want to define a range of interval after when rain starts, it starts raining again. So right now there's like minimum and maximum rain spawn time. That means that after the first 10 seconds and when the rain spawns and despawns, it's going to take anywhere between 30 seconds or 220 seconds to spawn the rain system again. So that's what these two mean. And then minimum rain duration value or maximum rain duration value is, again, this defines a range between basically you get a number which defines how long the rain lasts after it's been spawned, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. um, that's what these two are. Then you have the maximum rain particle spawn rate. This defines what the density of rain is, and since this is the Niagara system and everything, I've made sure everything is GPU based particles. That means the you can everything is rendered on GPU. That means you can push the number of particles to a several thousands and still not worry about performance impact. Yeah, I'm gonna leave this at 4000. So yeah, so those are all the default values you want to set. Now I'm gonna go ahead and change this to 0.1. Oh yeah, another thing you can change. So these are all the main variables, and then you can change a few things on the skyscraper itself. So for that, I'm just gonna change the time of day, so you can see the moon there. Now if I go to my custom sky, you have some values here. The sun brightness, basically the brightness of the sun. Then you have the stars. So that's the brightness of the stars. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at default. Actually, I'm gonna make it 2. And then you have the nebula, which is basically the blue constellation. So I'm gonna leave that at 2. Yeah. Then moon emissive is basically the material value of how emissive it is. So yeah, the more emissive it gets, the brighter it gets. This doesn't affect the light cast onto the world. This is just how bright you want this particular material to be. So I'm going to leave that at default, and the scale multiplier is basically how big you want the moon to be. So I'm going to keep this at 2. Alright, let's go back. Excuse me. Let's go back to the dynamic weather. Alright, so I'm gonna change the sky refresh frequency to 0.1. That means it's gonna refresh itself every 0.1 second. And I'm gonna change the simulation speed to 5. And I'm gonna just go ahead and keep this at 0. So where's the sun? There you are. When I hit play, you can see what happens. Wait, did I not? Oh yeah, I need to change the mobility to movable. I totally forgot about that. So when you drag in the direction line, by default it's going to be stationary, which means you can't really mess with the mobility. So change that to movable. Sorry, I forgot about that. Okay, now hit play, and then you can see that the sun is moving, and there's basically a day and night cycle right now. Okay, just a sec. I'm just gonna disable the rain and also make this 0.02. Okay, so the rain is disabled. I'm gonna change the simulation speed to 20 degrees instead. That's a little faster. Okay, there you go. You can see the clouds are warping. So the clouds change, warp. There's always constantly being updated with respect to where the sun position is, and the colors of the clouds change. The texture, the yeah, basically keeps changing. And yeah, you can see that northern lights spawn now. So I gave the I believe I left the probability at 50% chance. So it's going to be a 50-50 chance that it spawns every single night. Right now, let me enable rain, and initial rain time stamp is going to be 10. So that means it's going to start raining, or the weather system is going to kick in after 10 seconds of hitting play. Yeah, I'm going to leave everything as it is. Let's see what happens now. There you go. Got way more foggy, got cloudy, then it starts raining. I think I amped up the maximum value of fog for way too much. But yeah, you can see that it starts raining now. If the world was bigger, I could. Oh shit. Let me 0.02. I think that works. I'm gonna change this to 0. So there's basically, depending on what the simulation speed is, there's like a gradual increase. Um, there's a there's a duration before, or transition period for the weather system to kick in. So it's not going to instantly start raining. It's going to gradually, the sky is going to fill up with clouds gradually. It's going to get foggy gradually, and it's going to start raining gradually. Um, Let me make the simulation speed way faster. I'm going to make it 0.2 and change this to 2 seconds. Alright, so it doesn't constantly keep changing. Now it should start getting cloudy. There you go. And so it's getting foggy depending on what the value I've defined. And then it starts raining. Yeah. So I can amp up the rain particle spawn rate if I wanted it to be more dense or less dense. So that's pretty much it, I guess. Maybe change the texture and show you guys. Let me change that back to 10, 0.1. Oh, the rain is enabled, so you're not gonna see it. Alright. Okay. There you go. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Thank you and have a good day.